first of all, good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us on Zoom for another talk in our series, Conversations with the Past. Before we get started, I want to just quickly plug the Chapman's next program. Next Wednesday at 7 p.m., we have a panel of 4 local individuals talking about opportunities for local recreation and exploration. That program is also going to be on Zoom. So head to our website if you'd like to register for that. That'll be next Wednesday. But tonight, we're very excited to be joined by Marla Jacobs. Marla graduated from SUNY Potsdam with a degree in archaeological studies and is now the cultural manager at the Akwesasne Cultural Center, Library and Museum. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Marla for her talk, The Traditional Art of Black Ash Basketry.
Hello, my name is Marla Jacobs. I am cultural manager here at the Akwesasne Cultural Center. I am a Wolf Clan mother, and like Marie said, I graduated with an archaeology degree, and I also did a minor in museum studies, and that's how I did my job here. And I want to kind of introduce you to Akwesasne. Akwesasne is actually an Indian reservation that straddles the U.S. and Canadian border. We also sit on the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. So there's all of that, the what do we call it? The I guess, of Akwesasne. So what I want to share with you is information on the black ash trees, the connection between 2 cultures, also the survival of colonialism and how black ash basketry defines our community. And I would also like to talk about a threat to the black ash community and how we're trying to protect it for the future. I'm sorry, I did my introduction before I shared the screen. Okay, so black ash trees are located in like the northeast Ontario or US and the eastern Ontario. Also, they can be found in like Minnesota and the Michigan area. They thrive in wetlands and swampy areas, and they grow tall, 4,200 feet tall, and roughly about 30 inches in diameter is what they grow to be a mature tree. Best time to cut these trees is in winter, and that's mainly due to the snow really helping harvest the tree and moving it out of the forest. And why these trees are picked for baskets, as you can see in the first photo, is the rings. So it's easy to pull these rings apart from the tree after it's been worked on. And these other ones just are a little bit of identification of what you would look for when you're trying to find the tree. And what I want to share with you is the Penobscot tribe. The Penobscot tribe is actually the tribe that originally the black ash came from, and they are located in the Maine area, roughly around Bangor. Their tribe also extended into the eastern Quebec, and black ash was their original tradition. So they had that technology. And what happened is when us, if you look on the map, we are in the Iroquois speaking people area, which is northern New York, upstate New York, lower or eastern Ontario area. We Mohawk people have a large area that we kind of cohabitated with other nations, by and we also were big travelers. Mohawk people were known to be these aggressive warriors. So they traveled as far up as the Maine area um, in eastern Quebec, all the way down to the Carolinas. So we have a very big, extensive traveling and trading history, but we predominantly settled in the eastern part of New York and Vermont area. And how we ended up getting the black ash baskets was actually because we were so aggressively taking over certain spaces and I guess warring, we were a warring people. Our peoples kind of depleted a little. And we were also known to adopt other cultures, other people into our community. So when we explored, we kind of married into other nations, like the Penobscot. So what happened there is when we would marry, they would bring them back to our community, and that's how we ended up getting that technology, getting that information. And this was like over a period of 1,000, 2,000 years. It wasn't just recently. We've had this technology in our community for quite some time, and it has slowly evolved. And so our records only go back so far historically. So right now, we have pictures of the early 1900s showing that we have the black ash basketry in our community. Okay. And what it shows is that like this technology was passed on throughout our families. We were longhouse people, so we were always living together. So that's how we ended up passing on our traditions. And when colonialism came and our community kind of turned into larger towns, and our longhouses turned into single family homes, and our whole way of life just changed. And how we ended up surviving was taking that black ash tradition and turning it into a family business. So families, sisters, mothers, they would all get together and they would weave these baskets together, and how the whole family worked together. The men would go out and harvest the trees. The women would clean the ashes, the splints, and break it down, and we would be able to weave magnificent baskets like we have here. And they did this in order to survive, because that was a time where money was being introduced into our community, where we had to survive to buy supplies to change into this more modern way of living. And what I want to share is like these baskets were made in by the hundreds every day by these families, and the way they were spread across the state and into other states were through tourism. So when, like, I want to say in the 50s, people started to travel. So non-natives from like Niagara Falls, Syracuse, New York City, they would all come up to this area to observe the Akwesasne culture, the Mohawk culture. and they would shop. And baskets, Akwesasne was known for the baskets. Other nations had their own way of living, their own economic resource, and basketry was ours. They would go to Niagara Falls and get beadwork from the Tuscaroras and the Senecas. But yeah, they would find baskets here. And a lot of the time, women, mothers were taken advantage of. If they had lost their husband, or if they lost the male role model in their life, they would have to deal with these non-Indigenous sellers. They would come in and they would take advantage, buy large quantities of baskets for pennies per basket, and they were making very little for their family, so they had to make a lot. And that's how we became so abundant in our basketry skills. And then over time, we kind of changed our style up a little bit. We actually have utility baskets and what we call our fancy baskets. So there's two categories that we go through. And utility baskets are for things like the hampers or the laundry baskets, the pack baskets. What we have is a corn washing basket. So that would be considered a utility basket. So they have a main purpose in working. Pack basket was to carry loads of like fish or tools to other locations. So they all had a purpose. And then we have fancy baskets. Fancy baskets are baskets mainly designed special to attract the eye. So we would take a sewing basket, a plain regular basket, and then they would doll it up to basically attract tourists into buying them. And these baskets were so popular, that's what the women thrived off of, is making those utility baskets. And over time, I want to, like, this is a period of 100 years, from 1920 to 2020. It's an extensive art form, and we still use the utility baskets today. We have wedding baskets that we take to our ceremonies. We still use our pack baskets. We have garden baskets. So utility baskets are still a big commodity in our community. So we are still always looking for them. And fancy baskets are more now for decoration, for our art form. So it's something like a picture you would hang on a wall. We would buy baskets and put them on the shelves for decoration. And we have a lot of collectors, over the years. In the 1980s, we started our gift shop here at the Cultural Center, and we were selling the baskets that the families would create, because now instead of selling them to non-Indigenous sellers, we would sell them for them. So we were selling baskets like crazy to a lot of the visitors, a lot of the tourists from out of state and out of town. And when we started our cultural center, we were gifted back a lot of these baskets that were made prior to the cultural center. So baskets made in the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s were actually gifted back to the cultural center, and we actually have a lot of them on display now. And we really encourage basket making here at the Cultural Center. A lot of our artists, like I said, the 1920s, this is, I tried to include baskets in all of their pictures. Picture Anna Sunday and Marion Cook, they were matriarchs. They were the head of their household. They were the ones that would sit down and inspect and be the leaders in the basket making. Their husbands or their sons would be doing all the hard work. They would be cutting the trees and harvesting and pounding, doing the pounding and the splint making. And then they would also, it's a very long process in order to harvest a tree from the day you cut it to the day you finish your basket could take an entire month. So imagine you having 12 children and all of them working together to create these baskets is like a really fun journey, but it was also taxing on the families. But this is an example of how we Haudenosaunee worked together in not reviving, continuing our culture. So things were handed down through working together. So you would learn this process while you were a child, watching your mothers and your grandmothers doing all of this work, and you would grow up and you would complete that cycle. So here are some examples of how long this has been in our community. I only was able to go back to the 1920s because that's when pictures were starting to come around in our area. Other than that, it was mainly paintings and drawings, and I have very few of those. And it just continues to this day. So these are some really well-known artists of basketry, of Black ash basketry. Mary Adams and Margaret Tarrant here are one of the most famous basket makers in the 80s. And Mary actually made a Pope basket. It is the basket towards the back on the right-hand side. And that basket is called the Pope basket because she had created it specifically for the Pope when he came to visit Akwesasne in the 80s. So that's a very famous basket for us. And we actually have two of them. We have two replicas here at the Cultural Center, and we're very proud of them. She also created the wedding basket with the wedding cake basket, which is on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of Mary there in the picture. And we also have that on display here. So these baskets went from a very small form to a very large artistic form. These baskets were actually used as well. Like, they're not just for show, they were all put to use. So you would store items in these baskets. The wedding basket, I do believe, is layered. So every layer of the cake is a basket in itself. So that was pretty amazing. And that was created to give basically a gift to the married couple, and each basket would be filled with something from the family. And Henry Arkwright is one of the most renowned utility basket makers that we have in Akwesasne, and he didn't start basket making until his retirement. I do believe he was in his 60s when he started, and this was in the 90s. He became more popular in 2000s because he was such a perfectionist when he created his baskets. His baskets were the cleanest, most strongest baskets that you could ever get your hands on. And he was a well-known basket maker for not like teaching, just creating, and he was an elderly man. He would do the process from pounding the log to making and finishing the basket all by himself. He could do it all by himself. And we actually have a dedication to him here at our cultural center because his baskets are so well known. And he only had one successor, and his name is Jack Johnson. And he actually taught under Henry Arkwright just before he passed. He knew everything from start to finish, exactly the way Henry did it. So when you look at a Jack Johnson basket and you look at a Henry Arkwright basket, you really can't tell the difference. But yeah, he was one of the best male basket makers that we have. And Deb Jacobs, she is also a really well-known artist in the basket making. She actually has a website you can go on and you can get information for her. And she makes baskets here for our cultural center, our gift shops. We sell her baskets out of our gift shop, and you never know, in 50 years, we might be getting her baskets back in a collection. Our final fellow here is Angelo Johnson. Angelo is actually a part of the environmental department, and he is doing his best job at eradicating the emerald ash borer, which is it's an insect that is actually attacking the black ash trees. But he became a basket maker through a program he learned through his family. So he grew up pounding logs for a relative. I do believe it was his uncle, and he learned over the years of how to do the rest of the process, cleaning the splint, creating the molds, and doing the weaving and finishing the basket start to finish. And he actually ran a program here at the Akwesasne Cultural or Akwesasne revitalization program that they had a few years back, and he taught the public how to basically to weave these baskets. And like I mentioned, we have the emerald ash borer. The emerald ash borer is actually an Asian beetle that came in the 1990s, and it came in the 1990s, and it was undetected. So it was like a hidden infestor, basically. And when it was first discovered, it was discovered in the summer of 2002 near Detroit, Michigan. They noticed like their black ash trees were kind of disintegrating. This bug was attacking not only black ash, it also attacked other ash, like white ash, I think the gray ash as well. But it really goes after the black ash. I believe it must be sweeter for them. And when these bugs kind of infest in the tree, they burrow in the tree, they make the tree unusable for black ash basket makers. And it started to become a problem, and it started to spread. And how it spreads is through lumber or through traveling. So it'll hitch rides on firewood. So if people are leaving town or leaving the state and they're taking their firewood from their home and bringing it to a campsite or wherever, or lumber being shipped from one state to another for housing uses or building materials, it goes with it. So that's how it travels as fast as it did. And it started to become a problem in Canada. So both Canada and the US created laws when it came to transporting these materials across the border. And it was starting to affect our area roughly about 7 years ago, about 10 years ago now. And Akwesasne was actually a part of a document, and they reviewed the USDA document that tried to like eradicate the bug, and they are also in partnership with preserving or protection against this ash borer. And as reported in 2018, it is reported in 35 states and 5 provinces throughout the US and Canada. So it became more than just a small infestation, it became a pandemic. It is now past us trying to rid the ash borer, like we can no longer escape from it. So it is now in threat of the black ash trees in the black ash basket makers. So one basket maker actually called it her boogeyman because this was her life. This was her her job. Like she lives off making baskets, and she is a young basket maker. And she's like, one day I'm gonna run out of black ash before I'm done making baskets. Like, what am I gonna do? She's like, that's the boogeyman for her. So our community actually came together, and we are doing everything we can to preserve this tradition that we've had in our community for thousands of years. And because our reservation sits on both the American and the Canadian border, we have 2 different tribes and in our community. So the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, I've listed on both sides that create programs in order to help preserve black ash trees along with preserving basketry. And this is because, like, over the years, with the way our community has changed, we started to lose our basketry. People started getting part-time job or jobs at factories instead of making baskets to support their families. So our basketry makers actually started to dwindle. So instead of hundreds of families, it's down to a handful of families. There's only a handful of people now that make black ash baskets anymore. And we as a community are doing our best at reviving that. All of these programs here actually host basket making classes. They've put on programs to help educate people about the emerald ash borer, also what they can do to prevent the infestation in their area. So this is a lot about prevention and revitalization, and Akwesasne Cultural Center is actually part of that revitalization. And so we are doing our best at preserving that cultural tradition of the basketry. And here are a few examples of what our basketry has changed into. On the left, we have a Three Sisters basket collection, and that is the corn, beans, and squash. And this was created in recognition of our culture. Like, corn, beans, and squash are our staples that we survived off of. And that was her representation. And we also kind of turned our basketry into jewelry. Like, the art form of basketry has definitely evolved from simple baskets to now more of an art form. And you can wear baskets now. And these are just beautiful representations of who we are as Haudenosaunee people, as Mohawk people, and especially Akwesasne. Akwesasne was known for their baskets, and now that we have like these beautiful pieces coming out, our artists are out there and well known. And the basket on the left is actually basket from Ann Mitchell. Ann Mitchell is she's TikTok famous now, I guess you could say. She actually partnered up with Red Dye because of all of her baskets that she actually puts out on TikTok. And her baskets are just glorious. And she does one for every occasion. She teamed up with Brit and they did a Halloween special. She made a black top hat out of basketry along with a pumpkin that the hat sits on. But you can take the hat off the pumpkin and wear the hat and use the pumpkin as a Halloween basket, a candy basket. So that was really amazing. And when a TV show came out, she actually made a really, really beautiful egg. And that was in representation of the Games of Thrones, the dragon, the House of the Dragon. So that was really beautiful too. All of our artists actually are truly amazing, and they do collaborations with each other. You can get a utility basket maker and a fancy basket maker together along with a beater, and they will create amazing, beautiful work. And it's breathtaking. And I think that's it. Like, that's my presentation to you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This is another example of a basket that we have. This is called a strawberry basket, and this is actually pretty common that we sell these in our gift shop. A lot of people request them. They love them. They come in very small. They could be about 2 inches to about 4 inches in height. And a lot of it is made out of sweetgrass as well. So when you take a basket and you can smell the sweetgrass, so it's, baskets are very fragrant and we love them. That's me. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Marla. I'll give you a round of applause. I know it's virtual, so it's harder to get the applause, but if you could just stop sharing your screen and then we'll open it up if anybody has questions. I actually, you kind of started to answer a question that I had, which is that you talk about the black ash, but then at the very end, you mentioned sweetgrass also being incorporated in the baskets. Are there any other natural fibers or materials that are, usually used with either utility or fancy baskets?
Not normally. So when you're making a black ash basket, it's normally just black ash and cement. So the utility, they don't really add or anything to it. The fancy baskets, they actually do. If you look, can you still see it?
Oh no, we can't see your screen anymore. But if you wanted to share it again, you're welcome to.
Okay. Yeah, let me share that again. And if you look at this red basket here, this strawberry basket, you can see right in the center, there is sweetgrass in here in the very top. And also when you're making a fancy basket, you have to use the sweetgrass on the bottom. So there's always sweetgrass on the bottom of every fancy basket because it's smaller and it's thinner to get into the cracks of the the star at the bottom. So it really makes sure that it's a tight closure at the bottom of the basket. And sweetgrass is actually a medicine to us. So we actually harvest it and we braid it and we use it as a cleanser for ourselves, like for our minds and our bodies. And we burn it, and it smells amazing. Even when it's burning, it smells amazing. But sweetgrass, when left unburned, it still gives off this fragrance. It's a super sweet smell of grass, basically. I don't know how to describe it any different than that. And they do incorporate it in the fancy baskets more than they do in the utility baskets. And material other than just black ash and sweetgrass, nothing is really incorporated in baskets unless they're doing it for a project or something different. And then artists will find something. I actually recently saw some pictures of a leather maker make a basket in black ash weave. So that was actually really beautiful. And I do believe that was because, like I said, the black ash is kind of disappearing from our culture because of the emerald ash board. And so people are definitely coming up with different ideas. I know another basket maker is actually using reed now. She learned how to break down a reed and to mimic the black ash basket. So these are all in hopes to preserving the tradition of weaving, but making sure that we still have that. Again, it's kind of sad that we might be losing the tree itself. A lot of the dyes actually were more natural back in the day, like 100 years ago. They were dyeing their baskets. They did color their baskets. And what is beautiful for me, when I go and look at a 100-year-old basket, it's beautiful on the inside. The color still stays. I picked up a basket and I looked on the inside, it was all blue, like a beautiful dark blue. But if you put the lid on and put it aside, it's all natural. Like you wouldn't even tell. So like the light and the environment actually changes the color of the dye. So that happens too, yeah.
There's thank you for answering my question. There's a question in the chat. Does each nation have a specific design of basket that is exclusive to them?
No, I do believe so. Not specific. I do believe it comes down to the artist. The way the artist really implies their basket making skills, like their creativity. See, this is a strawberry basket. This could be replicated by every single person that makes baskets, and they'll all look the same. What could be done differently to make you think it's somebody else is signatures. Basket makers have signatures. So just the way they finish a basket, or just the way they start a basket, or how they lay their curls, or how they cut their material. Like you'll be able to tell, special people will be able to tell who made that type of basket. But between nations, there's not really a difference. Between Hood and Shoshone nations, I mean, the Penobscot people actually still really do they still work with black ash, and their baskets are different from the way we make them because they are a nation further away, so their artists have different influences. But you'll still be able, like that, you'll still be able to tell the difference.
Thank you. One more question about the colors. You started to talk about those. The colors are very vibrant. Are they, you did kind of mention that they used to use natural dyes. Is there still a use of natural dyes, or is it moved to more like processed dyes?
On the artist, some artists like to use the chemicals. Some artists like to use natural coloring. The thing about that is natural coloring does tend to fade faster, and some of the chemical dyes don't, but some of the chemical dyes are toxic as well. So it really, yeah, a lot of people use different types of things. RIT is that RIT? I think it's RIT. Right.
Yeah,
RIT,
RIT dye. Yeah.
yeah, it's the most common in our area. Natural was more 100 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask about, has anything kind of come out recently as like avenues for protecting the trees from the beetles, or is that kind of something that's just still being worked on?
So the only thing about protecting the black ash trees is harvesting them immediately. As soon as they hit maturity, because that's when um the emerald ash borer likes to attack the trees, is when they immediately become adults. So I know our environmental department is going into a forest and taking down every single adult mature tree in that forest in order to eradicate the emerald ash borer in that region. So this summer our community will be getting a large load of trees.
Wow.
So that'll be good for the basket makers temporarily. But the thing is, black ash takes a really long time to grow. It won't mature for 20 to 30 years. So they're younglings, like they'll grow, but again, we'll have to, as soon as it hits maturity, we'll have to take them down in order for our culture to survive off of this, the basket making. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's awful. It's awful that invasive species, like I said, it's beyond being able to come back from it. Right now, all they're doing is the best that they can do in order to preserve our culture. Is just taking the trees as soon as they can.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask Marla, or you can throw it in the chat. If there's no other questions, then Marla, thank you so much for your talk. This is very informative and interesting.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And if anyone's interested, sign up for our program next week on chapmanmuseum.org, and we'll keep you updated. Maybe if Marla has any programs through the Cultural Center, we'll plug those on our website or Facebook as well.
I'd be happy to.
All right, everybody have a good night.